Welcome to Session 5 of the series An Introduction to the Divine Principle. In this session, we will be studying the Principle of Creation, Part 4, the Growing Period, and Human Responsibility. In the previous session, we presented the purpose of creation, that God, our Heavenly Parent, intended us to each fulfill 3 blessings. Number 1, to become fruitful, that is, become a true son or daughter of God. Number 2, to multiply, meaning to get married and form a family centered on God's love. And number 3, to have dominion, which is to care for and live in harmony with all the created world. If we had fulfilled these 3 blessings, the ideal of creation would have become a reality, and we would each be experiencing the most wonderful and incredible life. Sadly, that is not what happened. In this session, we are going to examine the process by which these 3 blessings were to have been fulfilled. How does something in the created world fulfill its purpose? Everything fulfills its purpose by passing through a time period of growth. We call this the principle of growth. According to the Bible, God did not just pop things into existence. It reveals that there were 6 days of creation. Obviously, these were not 6 24-hour periods. These so-called days were actually vast periods of time. St. Paul understood that God's perception of time and our perception of time is different. In 2 Peter 3:8, he wrote that for God, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like 1 day. We divide the path of growth into 3 stages, and we give each of them a name. The first stage is formation, the second stage is growth, and the third stage is completion. All things come into existence and mature through stages of time. Minerals take time to form. A tree starts out as a seed, then sprouts, and finally bears fruit, and a chicken starts out as an egg and grows in time to become a mature chicken. All things have a beginning. They go through a process of growth, and they each reach a conclusion. In human life, we go through stages, from our birth and childhood to our youth and on to becoming adults. It's clear that everything must go through a growing period to reach maturity or completion. The question is, how? How does something grow to fulfill its purpose? The answer is simple. All things grow and develop automatically. They have no choice. They are guided by the principles and forces of nature, what are commonly called the laws of nature. Our physical bodies, which are a part of this universe, are the same. You don't decide to grow your hair, or make your heart beat, or digest your food. You can't take any credit for the functioning of your body, because it does not work by your effort. It all happens automatically by the laws of nature. Then why aren't we all fulfilled? It's because we are more than just a physical body. We each have a spirit in which resides our heart. Genesis 2:7 states, "The Lord God formed man from the dust of the earth and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living soul." Then what does it take for a person to be fulfilled in body and in spirit? To become a person of good character requires an investment of heart and personal effort. It does not happen automatically. The growth of our heart, our ability to love, is something special. It requires freedom. Love is not controlled by any law. Love is something that even God cannot control or dictate. True love requires our free choice. Love, when it is true and connected to God, will enable God to experience total fulfillment and joy. Such love becomes an unchangeable force for goodness, truth, and beauty. When fully expressed in a family, it creates the foundation upon which God's ideal can be established. But when love is still immature, because it is free, it can be misguided. And if love is misguided, if it is turned in the wrong direction towards our self-centered desires, It can cause terrible pain and suffering. Most importantly, because our children are the fruit of our love. Misguided love can severely damage our children, and through them, our future generations. Because love has this nature, God made special effort to guide the first man and woman concerning love. What kind of guidance did God give to the first man and woman? To understand this, let's go back to the three blessings. The order of the three blessings is important. The way God's ideal of creation was to work is that a man and a woman, as individuals, were to begin by fulfilling the first blessing. They were to grow to maturity in heart and character, to the point that they would resemble God. Only after reaching maturity were they to pursue the second blessing and engage in romantic sexual love and bring forth a family. To maintain this proper order, God commanded the first man, Adam, and the first woman, Eve, not to partake of sexual romantic love. He guided them to maintain their purity. For how long? Not forever. Just until their hearts reached maturity, to the point that they would be able to be good parents, standing as God's representatives, able to give God's love to their children. In the Bible, it speaks of a commandment that God gave to Adam and Eve. He told them that they were not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The significance of this commandment is often overlooked. Through the commandment, God is telling us that the responsibility for the fulfillment of His ideal is in our hands. Then, what was this commandment? What was it that God made us responsible for? The commandment, as expressed in the Bible, makes use of symbols and metaphors, which we will talk about in more detail in a future segment. But what we will discover is that God gave Adam and Eve responsibility for love. He told the first man and woman to keep their purity, to not engage in the romantic sexual love, in order that they may first mature and fulfill the relationship of love with God. Sadly, the first man and woman did not follow God's guidance, and they engaged in romantic love before reaching maturity. Their love, instead of centered on God, was centered on their own selfish desires. This began a pattern which has continued until today. The concept of human responsibility can be put into a formula of shared responsibility. The fulfillment of God's ideal of creation depends on two things: God fulfilling His responsibility, and we, humankind, fulfilling our responsibility. Now, even though it is true that God's portion of responsibility is much greater than ours, if we don't do our part, God's will, His ideal of creation, cannot be fulfilled. For example, when it comes to a farmer and his harvest, God may have created the seed, the sun, the earth's soil, the rain, the atmosphere, and all the laws of nature needed for plants to grow. But if the farmer doesn't invest his hard work, if he doesn't do his part, there isn't going to be a harvest. And this is why God's ideal has not been fulfilled. It is not because of God's failure or anything God did. It is because the first man and woman, when it came to God's guidance concerning love, did not fulfill their responsibility. As was mentioned in the introduction, God did not turn away from us. We chose to turn away from God. God designed His creation with love at its core. When love, which is the foundation for the family, and for all that is good, beautiful, and true, is corrupted, all things are corrupted. This is the fundamental reason that human society and our personal lives are so far from God's ideal. Thank you for your participation in this session. We have learned that the fulfillment of the ideal, that which we all seek for in our hearts, is only going to be realized when we fulfill our portion of responsibility. How we failed our responsibility and how we can restore that failure is what will be discussed in the sessions that follow.